Good evening, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching World News Tonight live from Warsaw. It's very difficult for him to get the oil and gas from other areas, says US President Donald Trump, as Hungary's Viktor Orbán made a trip to the White House seeking an exemption from American sanctions on Russia's oil sector. We'll have more on that in a moment, but first let's take a look at tonight's headlines. The US is looking for a new source of critical minerals in Central Asia. The Czech Republic to close its last remaining coal mine. And the EU Enlargement Commissioner speaks to TVP World on Ukraine's European aspirations. Viktor Orbán is in Washington. The Hungarian leader wants to convince Donald Trump to exempt Budapest from sanctions imposed on Russia's two biggest oil companies. And we're joined now by our correspondent in Budapest, Andrew Sweeney. Hello, Andrew. Can Viktor Orbán's good personal relationship with Donald Trump sway the American president's position on sanctions?
Well, it certainly can't help. The language that Orbán was using in the meeting today would have been music to Trump's ears. He's talking about how he wants to negotiate the sanctions. One of the ways he might be able to do that is by investing more in nuclear energy. And we got news this morning from Hungary's Foreign Minister, Péter Szijjártó, that an agreement had been signed on that sort of cooperation. So let's have a listen to what he said.
Another important element on the agenda for discussions will be the creation of a major economic and energy cooperation package. We've been working hard on preparing this over the past weeks and months. A significant step in this preparation was my recent discussions in Washington with the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. This substantial economic and energy cooperation package will contribute to guaranteeing Hungary's long-term energy security.
So really, the argument that Orbán has always made about the energy is that Hungary's economy would be ruined if it stopped using Russian energy. It takes 95% of its gas, 92% of its oil from Russia. Another point he always makes is simple geography. Hungary is of course a landlocked country, and it's not as easy for it to import energy from other sources. Now that's a sentiment, it's an idea that Donald Trump actually agreed with. Let's hear what he had to say during a meeting at the White House.
It's very difficult for him to get the oil and gas from other areas. As you know, they don't have the advantage of having sea. It's a great country. It's a big country, but they don't have sea.
Well, as for a proposed peace summit in Budapest, there was no news of that specifically in the meeting. We do know that both leaders were in agreement about the final outcome, which should be a negotiated settlement. Both of them said during the meeting it would take a miracle for Ukraine to win the war against Russia militarily. The proposed peace summit a couple of weeks ago, it was an idea that we never really got off the ground. But Viktor Orbán will be hoping that he can host a summit between Trump and Russian dictator Vladimir Putin in Budapest to perhaps show up his image as a peacemaker in parliamentary elections next year in Hungary. So, but as for the summit and as for sanctions relief for Hungary from the ones that are coming in at the end of this month, we'll just have to wait and see. Back to you.
That was Andrew Sweeney reporting from Budapest. Thank you very much. The US wants Central Asia's critical minerals. On Thursday, President Trump met with 5 heads of state from the region as both America and Europe seek to diversify their chain of supplies after recent trade tensions with China. Kazimierz Wysiak reports.
Uranium, copper, gold and rare earths. These resources are abundant in Central Asian countries, and US President Donald Trump would like to get more of them. That's why he invited leaders from Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan to the White House on Thursday.
One of the key items on our agenda is critical minerals. In recent weeks, my administration has strengthened American economic security by forging agreements with allies and friends across the world to broaden our critical mineral supply chains. We had a great relationship and a great meeting with President Xi of China.
But compliments aside, it is Xi Jinping and China which are considered one of the main economic adversaries by the Trump administration, especially in Central Asia.
You could point out that there is a disproportionate influence now wielded by China on all of these states, much bigger, in fact, than Russia's, although Russia, of course, gets manpower, immigrants from Central Asian states.
Rare earth minerals, which are abundant in the region, are crucial for the production of modern tech components. Just one of the states invited by Trump, Kazakhstan, sold $3.07 billion worth of minerals to China and $1.8 billion to Russia in 2023, compared with just $500 million to the United States.
What part is going to be commercial instinct, and how would I call it, kind Chinese pressure or coercion, and what part is going to be commercial instinct and competition? After all, the way that China has entered Africa is by competing with us for resources.
But the winds could be blowing in the West's favor now, as Central Asian countries are looking to diversify, especially away from Russia, which is struggling to make progress in Ukraine.
Countries want to partner with other countries who are winners, not with countries who are losers. If Russia is losing, if it does not have the image that it's succeeding, and if it doesn't have the resources to coerce these countries into going along with it, they will try to find space, find distance.
The change in attitude can already be seen through diplomatic moves made by some of the Central Asian countries. Kazakhstan has just signed the Abraham Accords, normalizing its relations with one of Washington's closest allies, Israel. The country also signed a memorandum of understanding with the US on critical minerals. While it's not a hard deal yet, it could be a sign of things to come.
It was always called the Greek game, and it's still the Greek game.
For TVP World, I'm Kazimierz Łyszak.
Thank you very much, everybody.
In January, Poland will become the only coal producer in the EU. That's because the Czech Republic is closing its last remaining coal mine. Experts point out that Prague's decision will only result in the country buying fossil fuel elsewhere, and most likely from its northern neighbour. Maciej Wilowski reports.
The Czech Republic is phasing out coal, planning to close its last operating mine by early next year. On January 31st, 2026, the last wagon of coal will leave the Czech Republic's Czech SM mine near the country's border with Poland after 250 years of operations. Due to its proximity to the border, the mine employs many Polish workers who could now lose their jobs.
What am I supposed to say? The government, the Czech authorities made this decision. What can we do? I've been working here since 2001.
Some were highly critical of the Czech government's decision.
I think they're shooting themselves in the foot, just like in Slovakia. It's their last mine, there is nothing left in the country. Where are they going to buy coal now? Surely it's needed.
With its ample coal production and close proximity to the Czech Republic, Poland could fill this void.
Czech Republic already now has been a big importer of coal from Poland. So if we are without coal, maybe Poland will be the country that we will use as a supplier of the lost production.
With its extensive coal industry centered in the southern region of Silesia, Poland produces 98% of the EU's hard coal, with the Czech Republic making up the remaining 2%. The latter's full phase-out of coal will make Poland the only EU member state to still mine the resource, at least in its hard black form. Unlike in its southwestern neighbor, Poland's coal industry is still heavily subsidized by the government, and the country has no plans as of yet for a full phase-out. State support has increasingly propped up the industry in recent years as coal production and profitability have fallen. Employment in the industry is also trending lower. While Poland has long been one of Europe's most coal-dependent countries, that is steadily changing. Coal's share of electricity generation fell below 50% for the first time on record in April, according to monthly data tracked by clean energy think tank Forum Energii. And renewable share, which includes solar and wind power, briefly surpassed that of coal earlier this summer. For decades, coal has been king in Poland, but with neighboring countries phasing it out and the clean energy transition firmly underway, that may not be the case for much longer. Maciej Wilowski for TVP World.
Former Polish Justice Minister Zbigniew Ziobro lost immunity in a series of votes which just concluded in the Polish Parliament. And our correspondent Kazimierz Łysiak is in front of the Parliament building. Good evening, Kazimierz. So is the former minister going to be imprisoned?
Good evening, Maciej. This remains to be seen as the members of the Polish Parliament have stripped him of his immunity and voted through all 26 motions laid against the former Justice Minister, including an additional one on his temporary arrest. Now the state prosecutor can file to the courts for this arrest. This is rather likely to happen. This would be an unprecedented situation not only in Polish but also in European politics, with such serious charges being laid against the former Minister of Justice. Let me just remind you, these charges, these allegations include leading an organized crime ring and also using at least 35 million euros of public money dedicated to victims of crimes, but instead using them to boost Minister Ziobro's his party's campaign in the 2023 parliamentary elections. The former Minister of Justice is also accused of misusing Pegasus spyware to spy on the members of the opposition. The number of charges is really extensive. So this could be really an unprecedented situation, like I said, in regards to the seriousness of the charges. The former minister could be facing up to 30 years in prison if he is convicted in court. Of course, innocent until proven guilty, but now the state prosecutor basically has a free hand in filing a motion to the courts to arrest temporarily at least the former Minister of Justice. Zbigniew Ziobro is currently in Hungary, and there is also some questions surrounding the fact whether he will come back to Poland to face justice or whether he will decide to stay there and try to avoid responsibility, as some other members of the Law and Justice Conservative Party, which is in opposition, have done in the past. We just have to wait and see. For now, former Minister of Justice Zbigniew Ziobro from the Law and Justice Party has lost his immunity, and we now have to wait for what the state prosecutor does next.
That was Kazimierz Łysiak reporting from the Polish Parliament in Warsaw. Thank you very much, Kazimierz. Ukraine's progress in meeting EU accession criteria is being hampered by corruption within the country. The EU Enlargement Commissioner, who prepared a report on candidate states, believes that Hungary's opposition should no longer be an obstacle to the process. More from our EU correspondent Angela Skujins in Brussels.
The EU executive announced earlier this week that it could welcome new members to the European Union by 2030, with Montenegro and Albania leading the pack. But there are laggards such as Georgia and Serbia, whose status hangs in the balance. Growing the European Union has been highlighted as the best way to ensure Europe's security amid Russia's continued invasion of Ukraine and shifting geopolitics. But what about the status of the war-torn country of Ukraine in and of itself? The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky dialed into Enlargement Day on Tuesday and stated he wants Ukraine to join the EU before 2030. However, it's not all rosy. Despite the report card being optimistic towards Ukraine, it highlights serious challenges such as fighting corruption, as well as convincing all the 27 EU member states that Ukraine should join the EU. In an exclusive interview with TVP World, the European Commissioner for Enlargement, Marta Kos, stated that Budapest should not continue to bulldoze Ukraine.
Hungary shouldn't affect the European future of Ukraine. There is so much more which needs to be done and can be done. Of course, Hungary is a member of the European Union, and I'm taking very seriously the concerns of the member states. But, you know, speaking about the rights of the Hungarian minority in Ukraine, I can assure you, I've been to Zakarpattia, I have met the representatives of their minority. There is nothing which could make a problem in the accession process.
European Commissioner for Enlargement Marta Koz speaking there about the need to convince Hungary to drop its veto against Ukraine so it could step through the negotiation process. But what about Trojan horses as well as those other EU aspirant countries? Watch the full interview between me and the European Commissioner for Enlargement Marta Koz coming up next to find out more. Angela Skujins from Brussels for TVP World.
And now, as announced, it's time for Angela Skujins' exclusive interview with EU Enlargement Commissioner Marta Koz on the progress the candidate countries, including war on Ukraine, made on the march to the bloc. That's all from me for now. Thank you, and let's watch the interview.
Growing the European Union family has occupied much of the spotlight this week, with the European Commission publishing the scorecards for the 9 EU aspirant countries. My name is Angela Skujins, this is TVP World, and I'm joined here in our Brussels studio by the European Commissioner for Enlargement, Marta Koz. Hi Commissioner, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
This week, when you published those 9 reports, you mentioned Trojan horses. These are those nations that appear to be doing the reforms, but once inside the European Union, may be backsliding. Do we have any Trojan horses now?
The main idea of discussing what kind or how the behavior of the member states should be is can we secure that once we will get newcomers on board, we will be stronger, not weaker. And we are quite demanding in the accession process with the candidates now, but what gives us the assurance that once they will become a member, they will not affect us from the inside. So this is the idea of the Trojan horses, but generally it is really how do the member states behave towards their responsibilities. We could take, let's say, Article 2 from the European Treaty, protecting democracy, rule of law, human rights, minorities, and so on. So we see that sometimes even the present member states are having troubles securing this. It is all about the safeguards. When we talk to the citizens around the EU 27, we see that they are really concerned about will we be strong? Will we be able to answer to all the pressures coming from abroad? And in my opinion, never ever before this was so much important. Why? Because now we see today that they are, I call them disruptive external forces who would like not just the candidates to fail, like the case in Moldova with the Russian hybrid war, but also who would like to see us fail. And we should really do everything that this shouldn't happen, that Europe could become, I would say, a superpower towards the east and towards the west.
I wanted to ask you, was there a specific example of a country within or outside the EU that has given rise to this fear? You mentioned Moldova, are there others?
No, it is not connected to any special case. It is generally because of this changed geopolitical situation and adversaries that as never before we also have to think about this.
And you mentioned safeguards. What could that look like in the future if implemented?
Safeguards are nothing new for the accession process or for entering into the EU. For instance, Poland has gotten 20 years of transitional period for the agriculture. In 2004, it was also a transitional period for the movement of workers. So it is, how can EU protect also the member states? We shouldn't forget that when we speak about the enlargement, nothing can happen against the will of the member states. So in preparing the accession treaty, so this is the treaty between the member states and the newcomer or new candidate country, we have to take care that also the interests of the member states are considered. Of course, in the way that we discuss this, that not that we make now the life of a new member states harder, and the very important thing, I will never accept that we have two different categories of members. So all the members are equal, but it could be some safeguards in the sense of transitional periods or anything what the member states will agree on.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky dialed in on Tuesday and he stated that he rejected what he refers to as second-class EU membership. He's referring to his country there, which has been vying to join the EU since Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022. What assurances do you give him that this will not occur?
I agree with him completely. We shouldn't have a second-class members. There is only one member state, and or member states all should be equal. So he's right.
Excellent. And speaking of Ukraine, the report mentions that while Ukraine is committing to some reforms, anti-corruption and fighting corruption still seems to be an issue. Of course, we're referring to his attempts in July to water down those two key anti-corruption institutions, which didn't go ahead in the end. He restored it within the parliament. How serious is corruption in Ukraine now?
If I talk about, if we talk about this enlargement report, we really should see a big picture. And the big picture is that we name all the things which have been done positively and what needs to be still done or needs to be done better. And fighting the corruption is something which is not just occurring in the report of Ukraine, but of many other candidates too, because it is in the scope of, we call it, fundamentals. And speaking about Ukraine has done so much already on the field of fighting the corruption. For instance, pure existence of NABU and SAPO is a proof that they have a system fighting the corruption. But, you know, something are agencies or having anti-corruption laws. Very important is how the citizens or the society is accepting. So no law can help fighting the corruption if people will accept that giving a bribe to get an apartment with a doctor is something very, very normal. And from this point of view, what happened in July, we haven't been happy, but as you have said, they have repaired this immediately. And we are now observing with more cautious what is happening on this field because of this. But once again, fighting corruption is just one part of what Ukraine is doing and is doing also good.
But has the trust been repaired between Brussels and Kyiv? I remember when this happened and the condemnation coming out of the Belgian capital was quite strong.
You know, how is it with the trust? What happened in July has harmed the trust. I wouldn't say that much on the side of the European Commission, because we go hand in hand every day, you know, through the negotiation process, and we talk to each other nearly every day. But it is very important what is the perception also in the member states. And this is where we have to work now a bit more than before. But, you know, I would be very happy if once anti-corruption will be so self-obvious also in Ukraine that we will not have to talk about this anymore. On the other hand, you know, we have some member states where corruption is still a problem.
Can you give me an example?
I would not go into the specific names now, but this is, you know, we have in nearly every member state, we have independent agencies dealing with corruption. Also, you know, taking care of how the government or the government officials are doing, or how are the preventive measures, or how actually, you know, the Transparency International is doing their ranking. So this is what we also take care in the member states.
You know, we're talking about reforms, and Ukraine can reform as much as it wants, but a big obstacle, the biggest for Ukraine, is Hungary. We know that Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has repeatedly blocked any meaningful action when it comes to opening any of these clusters and chapters. What are you going to do about the Hungarian problem?
I don't think that Hungary is the biggest problem for Ukraine, because Ukraine can do reforms without Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. Accession process is a transformation process, and the reforms needs to be done and will be done. And I hope that we will be able to move on the basis of the working groups on the technical level, where actually Ukraine and all the other candidates can do the reforms, but in this case Ukraine and Moldova, of course. On the other hand, we are finding the solution how to come to the decision which will enable us to formally open all the clusters. Once again, we don't need in this phase of the accession process formal opening of the clusters, even if all the clusters are ready, will be ready in November to be open, because the work on the technical level can go on. But yes, indeed, at the level, once we will this accession process will get serious, once we will have to get the unanimity, I hope that until then we will be able to also get the green light from Hungary.
Hungarians are also going to the polls early next year for a parliamentary election. Is there any hope that if there is a new leader in Hungary, that this could shift the dial in Ukraine's favour when it comes to joining the EU?
Once again, you know, Hungary shouldn't affect the European future of Ukraine. There is so much more which needs to be done and can be done. Of course, Hungary is a member of the European Union, and I'm taking very seriously the concerns of the member states. But, you know, speaking about the rights of the Hungarian minority in Ukraine, I can assure you, I've been to Zakarpattia, I have met the representatives of their minority. There is nothing which could make a problem in the accession process.
We're talking about optimism for Ukraine, but some of the other reports weren't as positive. Serbia and Georgia were quite scathing. The report on Serbia mentioned reforms are stalled, and in Georgia, this week we saw opposition figures thrown into jail and charged with treason. What message do you have for both of these countries?
Indeed, you know, in the opinion of the Commission, Georgia is a candidate country only on the paper. I know that the government of Georgia is lying to their people that they will bring the country into the European Union. They are doing the opposite. You know, with adopting the laws which are against the EU, they are bringing the country away from the EU. And, you know, they are putting journalists, opposition leaders, or people who are not on their side into jail. They have no free media or very little free media. They are oppressing civil society organizations. So this is really not European. And, you know, I called on the government of Georgia to really do what actually their people want. They are now on the streets protesting for the European future. So they should rather listen to their citizens and not putting them into jail.
Absolutely. And going to Poland, you're heading to Warsaw next week for the EU-Ukraine Investment Conference. What are you expecting to achieve there?
We are organizing this investment conference, and I'm so happy it is in Poland, because Poland is one of the most supportive countries to Ukraine. Poland is playing a huge role today, first being in the position, speaking out of their own experiences, coming into the EU in 2004 as my country, Slovenia. Then it is defense. Their defense is very strong in Europe, so this is also a military power. But on the other hand, you know, there are many Polish companies who know Ukraine businesses well. And according to the World Bank, the reconstruction of Ukraine will cost us more than $500 million. And we will need a lot of money. And it will not be possible that EU will pay for the whole reconstruction. So without the private businesses, the reconstruction is not possible. The main goal of this conference is, and I will meet a lot of businessmen and companies there, is that we tell them what is possible to do. Some people say that they should wait that the war ends and they should invest. But the reconstruction of, let's say, buildings or streets or energy infrastructure is already happening. So some of them wait, but already there is a good time now to invest. And of course, I would also like to explain that there are some financial mechanism, where the European Union can take care about the risks of investing in Ukraine, and we are doing this quite well. There are some companies who are already present there and are doing good businesses.
Sounds like you have a busy agenda ahead of you. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. And we were speaking mostly about, perhaps the difficult cases, but we also have Montenegro and Albania, which could be the next new members or the new members in the time of our present Commission. So we are working also on this. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. And thank you so much for taking the time for watching TVP World, but make sure that you stick around as more news, commentary and analysis is coming up. See you next time.